As could have been predicted, Newt Gingrich is now the front runner. That couldn't have been predicted. He's now the front runner. But once he became the front runner, what could have been predicted was the onslaught of attacks to Newt Gingrich. And to be fair to Newt, which there are a ton of things. No, there are a ton of things to pick on this guy. No, I'm now saying that there are a ton of things to pick on about this guy, Newt Gingrich. I mean, from the fact that he was a hypocrite, he was impeaching a president while he was having an affair. He was impeaching a president for the exact same reason. He has had all kinds of votes in Congress that have been against any kind of social justice in this country. He has turned a blind eye at every single turn toward entitlements. He tried to restructure a Congress and was then booted out of that same Congress. And now he is talking about having taken money from Fannie Mae when he spent a long time criticizing Fannie Mae on the outside. And he took over $1 million from Fannie Mae, $30,000 a month at times, if I'm not mistaken. This is Barney Frank talking in ways that are reserved for Barney Frank about Newt Gingrich. This is clip number 1.
Officials familiar with his work at Freddie Mac say that his role had nothing to do with lectures in history and everything to do with building relationships with Republicans on Capitol Hill. I have to ask you, isn't that lobbying?
Oh, yes, he's a lobbyist. You talked about the L word with Newt. Let's be clear, the two L words apply to Newt, lobbyist and liar. Mr. Gingrich was reprimanded by the House for lying. He has a history of doing that. And this is nonsense that he was being paid $1.6 million and maybe more to talk about history, to talk about the transcontinental railroads. He was clearly there as a lobbyist. And again, he kind of slipped and acknowledged that when he said to justify that large amount of money, after all, I'd been Speaker of the House. You don't enhance your academic credentials by having been Speaker. What you enhance is your value as a lobbyist.
And so, again, the things that are so easily criticized about Gingrich are worse than any of the other candidates. I mean, you don't have a lot of history with Herman Cain. You just have the present, and it's a disaster. But it's funny and it's benign in a way because he's proving himself unfit for the presidency, but he hasn't done anything either.
It's a combination of things. It's like with Cain, you're going to question his competence.
Yeah.
And with Gingrich, you can't help but question his character.
Right. Well, right. And with Cain, to be fair, you have to criticize and look at what he did with women and the way he behaved around women as well.
That's way below, like, the guy doesn't know anything and is incompetent.
Well, it's well, yes, for some people it isn't, but I understand what you're saying. The truth is that he's unfit for the presidency across the board, but his unfitness manifests itself in ways that are not illegal, that are not hypocritical, that are not, as Barney Frank said, lying, and that are not, I mean, most of all, going back to hypocritical again. He's somebody who has criticized lobbying, and what has he been? He's been a lobbyist. Barney Frank went on to say to the Boston Globe, there are a number of conservatives whom I respect. I'd love to know who they are. Newt's just never had any principles. So no, I'm not surprised about this at all, he said, referring to a report that Gingrich earned between $1.6 million and $1.8 million in consulting work for Freddie Mac. And a Gingrich spokesman confirmed to the Huffington Post that Freddie Mac paid roughly $30,000 per month for his quote-unquote strategic advice. Now, Gingrich is going to say it's not strategic advice. It was only strategic advice. It wasn't any kind of lobbying.
Yeah, but strategic advice is like, hey, you should talk to person A, and let me call person A to make sure they take your call when you ring them.
Yeah, I want to listen to Barney Frank talking about Newt Gingrich a little bit more because I think that Barney Frank and Dodd-Frank itself has become such a flashpoint in this in the debates here that people have been running against Barney Frank as much as they've been running, or almost as much as they've been running against Barack Obama in these debates. The Republicans have been. So it's nice to see Barney Frank have a chance, and of course, when he has a chance, he doesn't disappoint. This is clip number 3, Barney Frank talking about Newt Gingrich.
What are we to make of this man as we approach the presidential primaries?
Well, I think he is fundamentally intellectually dishonest. He is a man who was known not for any particular commitment to principle, but for someone who wanted to just get ahead politically. There are a number of very thoughtful conservatives with whom I disagree and whom I respect greatly. Ron Paul is one such one. Newt Gingrich never stood for anything other than his own advancement. He was very clever about that. He's also, by the way, the one who introduced the current level of vitriol into our politics. He he came in and decided that this notion of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan being cooperative, of Minority Leader Robert Michael working with the Democrats, that was wrong. And he crusaded to say, look, we are enemies. The Democrats are bad people. And, in fact, carry that out. On the other hand, it was unusual that he got to be Speaker in 1995, and by 1998 he was forced out as Speaker. That doesn't happen very often. There's a lack of ethical core to the man that, as bright as he thinks he is, and he's not as smart as he thinks he is, it betrays him.
I mean, asked and answered, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there you have it. Across the board, everything that's wrong with Newt Gingrich.